So we're up to about 68, and it is 11. As we have said, we're going to go ahead and bring our other presenters onto the stage, and I will introduce them to you all. So we've got Dawn. Dawn Rudman is the Director of Congregational Development and Marketing at Augsburg Fortress Publishers, where she has developed more than 20,000 pages. Now, this kind of cracks me up a little. Only Dawn would know how many pages she's developed over the course of her career. 20,000 pages of faith formation curriculum, 5 Bibles for kids and youth. With a PhD in developmental psychology, Dawn writes, teaches, and speaks about how an understanding of brain development can guide the early faith formation experiences we create for young children in our church communities. Dawn is also the editor of Mouth House, a new book series from Augsburg Fortress that amplifies voices for change. Dawn and her husband, Jonathan, live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and have 2 young adult children. Heather Clausen is a resource developer at Augsburg Fortress, has spent the past 2 years helping to develop the Lutheran Yes curriculum. She's has undergraduate degrees in biblical studies, youth and family ministry, and Christian education. Additionally, she has a master's degree in education and a doctorate degree in educational administration and global education. She has worked in both youth ministry and education for more than 25 years, including 4 years teaching at the Masai Girls Lutheran Secondary School in Tanzania, East Africa. She lives in the Seattle area of Washington State, and this is really important, I suppose, for all of us. She has 2 confirmation-age kids, which has proved very helpful while developing Lutheran Yes. So Dawn and Heather, welcome to the webinar. We're glad to have you with us. Again, let's do one more crack at a little bit of logistics here. Please, those of you who are on the webinar now, we're up to 78. Use the comments feature to ask any questions you might have. Even if we don't get to those questions are still important to us as we move forward in the release and education around Lutheran Yes. And so definitely use that. We will have a time of Q&A at the end. It is a 45-minute webinar, and it is a webinar that is being recorded. So you'll be able to see an on-demand version of this shortly afterwards. I'm going to continue now into some of the initial slides regarding Lutheran Yes. It's a very amazing curriculum, and I'll tell you why right now, because it's a curriculum that deals with confirmation kids who just don't want to sit and listen. We've really thought seriously about this. It gives time for agency, movement, hands-on quests that teach how they can actually learn regardless of learning styles. We've heard our youth feel disconnected from one another. Well, we want to deal with that too in Lutheran Yes. It includes built-in connection activities. Every session makes belonging the priority and not just an afterthought. I want a curriculum that Gen Alpha thinks is cool. You know, a lot of changes has happened ever since COVID, and we're all dealing with those things in our various settings, including in the publishing setting. And so we really want you to know that Lutheran Yes was specifically created for post-pandemic middle school students who feel less connected, who are more digitally dependent, and experience more mental health challenges. And finally, we need something flexible for our size. And this is a big part of Lutheran Yes, as I'm sure we'll hear along the way. We know that there's a lot of different size congregations, a lot of different classes from one confirmand to dozens and dozens. So whether you offer one quest or all 3, whether you have one group or several, this curriculum adjusts to your ministry context. Is it any wonder why we're excited about Lutheran Yes here at Spark House? So I'm going to turn this over to our panelists who are going to talk a little bit more about Lutheran Yes. So Heather, what makes Lutheran Yes different?
Yeah, so David mentioned several of the unique features of this curriculum, but we are being very, very intentional that this is a screen-free curriculum. There are no videos to watch, there's nothing to record, because we really believe that the connection that kids can make with each other and their larger faith community is really vital in their confirmation years. So connection comes first, and we'll hear about how we've uniquely woven different connection points into this curriculum as we go through this webinar. When we say it's student-led, we mean that when it comes to the larger sort of teaching focus lesson time, students have a choice in how they learn that topic. And we will talk specifically about what we're calling quests in a little bit as we break down this curriculum section by section. But the students get to choose how they want to interact with that topic based on their own interest and based on their own learning styles, and maybe based on a friend or two who wants to do it with them. Back to that connection point in confirmation. We have listened and we know that you need flexibility in this curriculum. And so the flexibility comes in a lot of different ways. One way is that we know that some of you are highly trained youth directors, deacons, pastors who are teaching confirmation. And we also know that many of you are volunteers, and many volunteers get pulled into helping lead confirmation. And so the flexibility comes in that you don't have to be an expert or a biblical scholar in order to guide the students through their sessions every time you meet together. So the flexibility in that, and then in space, we know that there are some big church buildings out there and you have multiple space options and areas kids can go during confirmation. And we know that in some churches, that's not an option either. So we have built flexibility into how you use the space as well in your building. And it is really for any church size. David, just one more point on that previous slide. We know that there are some tiny rural farm churches out there with 1 or 2 confirmation students, and we know that there are larger programmatic churches out there with many kids in confirmation, possibly several small groups. And so this curriculum built in that flexibility as well for whatever church size, whatever confirmation size you have. So we will continue explaining what we mean by all of this, and I will pass it on to Dawn now.
Thank you, Heather. Lutheran Yes came about as far as how we designed it based on research that we conducted over almost a couple years. We did some extensive qualitative work by interviewing people in focus groups to really dive into what their needs were, what their pain points were. And we also did a fairly sizable quantitative study of over 300 ELCA congregations. And our results showed us that confirmation is different in this post-pandemic world. And so leaders still wanted curriculum that could teach the foundations of the Lutheran faith. That formation piece or that catechesis was important, but they also wanted to have curriculum, to have students experience ways that they could connect faith to daily life and have opportunities for meaningful interactions with other people. And they also wanted that piece of scaling to fit congregations of various sizes and, across different lengths of time. But we really saw in the responses so much empathy for these students and for their families, and a recognition that confirmation after the pandemic is just different. Depending on the age of the student, they were doing remote school, maybe for 3 months and maybe for the whole year after when they were in preschool or kindergarten or first grade. Their families may have been one of the many families who just aren't showing up at church as much for worship, for Sunday school, and now for confirmation. So that affiliation with a congregation, that tie has sort of loosened. And we got so much helpful insight from these congregations saying it's almost like they need kind of a confirmation that's a little gentler. If you are familiar with our Spark House confirmation curriculum, you know that humor has been sort of a main part of Reform and Collaborate. And we also have that curriculum called Think, Believe, Do, or TBD. And it was clear that these students need something gentler, need something that's more sort of focused on building relationships with each other, with their leaders, with God. And we really hope that what we have developed here with Lutheran Yes lets us help you enter into those spaces and just do confirmation differently in that way. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what do I need to do Lutheran Yes? Lutheran Yes has 3 components for leaders. One of them is the Student Quest Book. And this is a resource you will want to purchase for every student. There's a spot right on the front for them to put their name so that when you are collecting them at the end of every session, it's very easy to see in the next session who gets what. And you'll see if you have a quest book, or even if you look online, every page looks different. There's a high amount of novelty, but it's also designed in a way to be self-directed so that a student isn't holding on to this and waiting for their leader to tell them what to do. In most cases, you can read through any page, any spread in the Student Quest Book and see how the student is directed to do the next activity. And the final thing I'll add about the Quest Book that they use primarily during Quest, but sometimes they might cut something out at the end of a session to take home with them, or they might use it during their biblical exploration during a time we call focus. But this Quest Book that looks new and pristine at the beginning of a confirmation unit should look very well used. It should have pieces coming out of it. It might be a little thicker in some places and thinner in other places where you've cut things out. We really want students to engage with the content here and interact with it in all kinds of ways. So the student is at the heart of how we develop curriculum. This Student Quest Book is carefully designed to engage with students so they can use it during each session. The next part of the product system that I'll highlight is the connection deck. And this is a deck of 56 cards. It was designed by an avid gamer who is also a pastor and holds a PhD in theology, and is very passionate about bringing games into how we can interact with kids and youth in church. And the connection deck features a whole host of images on one side that were chosen to be kind of open-ended, to encourage conversation, to give students opportunities to start practicing using that emotional vocabulary if they're asked to choose certain cards to reflect certain ways that they're thinking about or feeling certain things. And then the other side of the connection deck includes cards that have a number, a word that's an emotion word, and a symbol for one of the elements of worship. There's also a background color. And in the corner here, we have used the symbols that are used for people who are colorblind and maybe couldn't see the background color so that they can recognize what the color is for any of those students or leaders who might be colorblind. And these cards are designed in a way that they're used very flexibly. And we think that if your kids really get into them, they might end up making up some of their own games for what they can do with this deck of cards. So the connection deck is used twice in each session, once at the beginning to get connected and once for a regather activity that's more of a game. Finally, you, the leader, are probably thinking, where's my leader guide? Where's the thing that tells me what to do? Here we've got a leader guide that outlines for you, using the same pedagogical approach for every single session, a way for you to prepare and then move into the session. And if you have a few small leaders working on Lutheran Yes, we strongly advise that you buy a leader guide for each of them. Now, we want you to know that if you subscribe to Sparkhouse Digital for the youth module, you will also get access to all this leader guide content starting in September. We think it's a little handier to have something that's bound, but we also know it might be helpful to make copies of certain things if someone's substituting in. And so look in September for all this leader guide content to join the Sparkhouse Digital Youth Collection. That is the product system, these 3 items, and you'll note that there is not a lesson video. That is something very different than what we've done in the past for Sparkhouse Youth Resources. but we think that this different approach is really going to be a better fit for where students are at today if you're looking for something different than, say, Reform or Collaborate or TBD. With that, I will have David advance to the next slide. Heather, take it away.
Yeah, so if you already have purchased your items for Lutheran Yes, you may have noticed that Unit 1 is all about Lutheran worship. And that was an intentional choice on our part when we developed this curriculum, because we wanted to start with something that was familiar to the majority of your confirmation students. And for the majority of them, they have sat through at least one Lutheran worship service sometime in their life. And for those who haven't, we've made it very approachable to learn about Lutheran worship. And we break it down. Every unit has 10 sessions. And so you can see the 10 sessions in Unit 1. We start with what is worship? And we start really global in that topic, and then we get pretty specific to their own church and worship in their own congregation. But what ended up happening when we developed this unit on Lutheran worship is that we were able to tap into the different parts of the Catechism as well that we developed larger units for later in the curriculum. We are currently finishing up Unit 2, 3, and 4, and you'll see the topics for all of those later in this webinar. But in this Unit 1, what is worship? We talk about the church year. We talk about baptism. There's a session on Holy Communion, the Lord's Prayer, different prayers in worship, the Apostles' Creed, the colors of worship, all those liturgical colors that change throughout the church year. And then session 10 in every unit kind of culminates with a different approach to the lesson, and not necessarily 3 different quests, but and a culminating experience that your whole confirmation students get to kind of do together. So session 10 of Unit 1 is where they plan and lead their own worship service, and they'll plan it and they'll lead it within your confirmation session time. And hopefully many of them will have a chance to actually lead their congregation in the worship service they have designed as well. And if you pay close attention throughout Unit 1, every session has something that can be held onto later for that session 10 worship service. In one case, it's a prayer chain that can be used as the prayers of the people during that worship service. In another session, it's a banner that they make that could be used as the paraments or even a procession. So we've designed that carefully too, so that they're sort of already planning ahead for that culminating worship service that they plan in session 10 during their first unit of Lutheran worship. So as Dawn mentioned, we can go to the next slide now. Your leader guide includes a getting ready section for the leaders. The students don't have this. And that getting ready section has 4 subsections for you and all your volunteers to read through, to ground yourself in the topic, some biblical background, some historical background, and it's found right there in your leader guide. So David, if you go to the next slide, you can see those 4 different content areas that help the leaders prepare. So we have a looking back section that includes the biblical and the historical background to that topic. We've got our unique Lutheran lens and what we believe as in that topic, connecting to our own Lutheran theology and Martin Luther and the Small Catechism. We have current connections, which I really like because it really grounds leaders in what middle schoolers might be wrestling with about this topic and why this certain topic is important today for middle schoolers. We include some questions they might ask about that topic and some ways they might look through their own unique lens and their own experiences in the world as they approach this topic. And then saying yes. This curriculum is all about saying yes to being Lutheran, saying yes to their baptism as they affirm their baptism at confirmation, saying yes to being part of a larger faith community, saying yes to their faith and growth in their own faith journey. And that saying yes is specific to what baptismal affirmation does this session topic connect to. So we've really helped design this so that leaders are grounded in that topic. And of course, those of you who are volunteers or recruiting volunteers, this really helps ground everybody and get everybody started and centered in that topic before leading and facilitating the middle schoolers and young high schoolers through the topic. And as we go to the next slide, you can see how each session flows. So as students gather, we know kids gather at different times. Some come right on time, some early, some a few minutes late. So there are some gather activities that are provided for you to facilitate as kids are gathering. And these are meant to be really quick activities that don't need instructions or directions and that kids can just jump into as they arrive. At the end of that gather time, we have what we call Get Connected, and that's their first use of the connection card deck in each session. And many of those Get Connected activities are actually tied to the lesson topic or might pose a question for them to consider as they guide themselves through that session. After the Gather and Get Connected, we have a focus time, which there are generally 2 scripture verses that you read through with your students, and there are a few discussion questions. This isn't meant to be a deep dive biblical studies. This is meant to be an intro to the biblical grounding for that topic. So flexibility, again, you have 2 biblical passages. You can choose to do both or one, depending on your time, depending on your size, depending on your group. And then we get into the real meat of these lessons, which is called the Discover time, which is what you would maybe consider the lesson or the learning time. And that is what we're calling the quests. There are 3 quests that have been designed for every session. Each quest has a different learning method. Some are very active. Some are very engaging with the student quest book. Some have movement, some are building, some are creating, some are art focused. There are 3 quests, and that's when the students get their choice. And that's when they take their student quest book and they guide themselves through their topic and their quest that session. And so again, the flexibility and the choice is with you and what best suits your confirmation program. If you have the space and the time and the resources and the materials and the group size that can support offering all 3 quests, that's fantastic. And we hope that you'll be able to do that. We know that space can be limiting. We know resources can be limiting. And we know that some of you only have small groups of confirmation students. And so it's again, your choice. You can offer all 3, or you can pick the quest that best suits your situation in your setting. So there are 3 quests, and that's what the students use their student quest book for. Dawn was mentioning it's very self-guided. All the instructions and step-by-step, anything the students need for their quests are right in those quest books. So you hand them their quest books. They go to wherever they're doing their quest. They guide themselves through their learning. And then at the end of that Discover time, everyone comes back as a group for what we are calling the regather time. That's when they interact with the connection card deck again. There's a game or an activity, sometimes linked back to the session topic, different from the Get Connected activity with the connection card deck earlier in the session. And then there's then you send them off into their evening, their day, their week, and wrap it up, collect those quest books, and send them off with their yes for the week. And Dawn, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. We're just going to show a couple examples from Unit 1. Starting with the gather activities, I chose 2 of them. One of them is more likely, or it's more catered to just sort of taking the emotional temperature of your students. So they're called care continuums. And this gives the examples of things where you as a leader could write on a whiteboard or have different places in the room for example, those 4 weather systems, and having students choose a weather system. Are they feeling sunny? Are they feeling cloudy? Are they feeling stormy? The care continuum helps you as a leader sort of see, like, what is our next hour together going to be based on where students are at? Another one is like, here's something in the news right now that I'm thinking about, and they can just write down on a whiteboard or on sticky notes. And so this is an example of a gather activity that if your students really like this, maybe you just adapt it from session to session if it seems to really connect with them, or you can use whatever gather activity would be in subsequent sessions. The other gather activity I chose is really specific to the session topic of prayer. I know folks probably have to get close to the screen to read this, but imagine that you've set up a continuum of, do you agree or do you disagree with the statements about prayer that are going to be read? And sometimes you can just do it like hand raising, like agree is very tall and disagree is very low, and like put yourself on the continuum. Or you might have students who really want to move, and so you have two corners of the room, agree and disagree, and you ask them things like, how do you agree with the statement that prayer is a conversation with God? Or a statement like, there are right ways to pray, there are wrong ways to pray, just to kind of see what is their sort of opening or initial knowledge, or do they have a viewpoint on this? Maybe they don't. They haven't thought about these kinds of questions, and it helps you get ready for a session where you might need to be doing a little bit more getting up to speed, or just being okay with the fact that students have differing levels of knowledge and familiarity with prayer. So these are just two examples of gather activities. You'll have two choices for every session. After you've gone through that time where students sort of join as they get to your space, we move to the first activity with our connection deck. And this is the deck where they use it during the get connected time after gather, and when they regather after the quests. So you can see sort of the layout of many of these cards here. You see the numbers, you see the images. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just share really quickly. In a get connected activity, in one of these sessions, they are asked to look at all the cards and choose one that they think somehow represents belonging or connection. And Heather and I have been wondering for a while now, how are people going to use the card with the donut that has fallen on someone? So if you have some clever middle school interpretations of that, we'd love to hear them. But you can see the type of image really varies. Some are more realistic, some are more abstract. The colors differ. The scenes differ. We actually had one of our reviewers of these cards say, I just want a deck of these for me and my council. And we've used them in team meetings as well. It's really interesting to see how these images really get people talking. And so in this particular one, they could choose one that represents belonging or connection. And we know middle schoolers, they've got a strong, quirky streak. So they might choose that one that has the heart balloon descending on the cactus. And they might say, well, that's a connection because somehow the balloon and the cactus have found a way to be together. I mean, who knows what they're going to say about these cards. They're deliberately open-ended for you to engage in all kinds of activities. Once they've done that get connected activity, they move to the focus time, which is when you're spending time in scripture. And I know someone in the comments has asked, like, is there a Bible unit at this time? Right now, we are not developing a biblical unit specifically for, say, Old Testament texts and New Testament texts. They are in scripture for every session, but at this time, we're focusing more on worship as a way to introduce a topic that we know most students are at least aware of. They've been to a worship service, and that gives us some ways to enter into how the worship connects with parts of the small catechism and their understanding and their connection with God. So this focus time is the time they're spending in scripture. If it is a part of your program that you engage more deeply, or you have additional texts you want to introduce, you certainly could do that. Right now, the focus time gives them a few passages to read and some questions. And we always try to make sure if there's a word or phrase you don't understand, you can ask about it now. We don't want to have students think that, oh no, my leader assumes I know what we're reading. My leader assumes I know how to find a Bible passage. And for the person asking about students with learning disabilities, and especially in the area of reading, we provide several Bible reading techniques because we know nothing kind of strikes terror into the hearts of people more than okay, we're just going to go around the circle and everybody reads and all the kids look and see, okay, which verse am I reading? And it's really stressful. And we want to give kids an opportunity to have success with reading scripture. And sometimes that means someone else is reading it, or they're reading it in a pair or a small group, or they're acting it out. After this focus time, students are going to move to Discover, which is when you as the leader have chosen one or more quests to arrange materials for. And Heather is going to tell you more about those quests now.
Yeah, these are some examples from Unit 1 of what you might see in the Student Quest book. And you can, the one right in front of you, the spread of the world map is right where we start with what is worship and what kind of buildings do people worship around the world? What does worship look like in other parts of the world? And then we guide them back to their own church building and experience and worship in their own congregation. You can see these pages are very colorful. They're designed in such a way that they're eye-catching. We hope that it draws students in right away. We have on the top left, those circles are actually part of our session on prayer, and they are representing different postures of prayer. And on the top right, kind of tucked behind the world map, there is a very cool quest where students go somewhat on a scavenger hunt to find pieces of a worship medallion, and they cut it out and put it together, and they work together to discover the answers to some different clues. So again, all of these are tapping into different learning styles. They're tapping into different attention spans. They're tapping into being very collaborative in some of the quests that the students work together. They're very engaging, they're interactive. There's a lot of creativity built into these quests as well. And also we give students time to reflect on what do they know about this topic. They guide themselves through their quest, and then they come back and reflect on what they know now, what they've learned, what new information do they have now after they've work through this topic. Again, lots of movement, lots of variety, and lots of collaboration and learning modalities for all the ways that kids' brains work as they learn. Then if we go to the next slide, we can see at the end of the Discover time, the whole group comes back together and they do the regather activity with those connection cards again. And then there's a quick send activity every week. Sometimes it involves cutting something out of that quest book, and there are two examples here of a couple of things they cut out during Unit 1. At the end of the Holy Communion session, they have the option to cut out a recipe for baking bread. They can go and bake that at home. And again, that helps to bridge the gap between learning at church and faith at home. And so we're hoping to try to build some of those bridges as well. And then the other send activity you can see there is part of the prayer session, and it's a prompt. They will say this prayer at this time each week, just as a reminder to keep faith practices as part of their daily life. And again, building that bridge between church faith and home faith and growing in their faith together in all places.
We have 4 units currently planned for Lutheran Yes. The first one, Lutheran Worship, is available now. And this fall in October, we will be releasing the second unit on Lutheran theology that will cover Martin Luther and the Reformation. It will cover some grace, what do Lutherans think about the Bible, confession and forgiveness, and it also has a culminating experience in the 10th session for students. And the third unit will focus on the 10 commandments and also give students a way to see how Jesus gave us a new commandment. So we're making sure that there is both law and gospel when students are engaging with the 10 commandments. And our final unit that we have planned is on the 5 baptismal affirmations to give students more of a grounding in what does it mean when they say yes. On that confirmation Sunday, when they have those promises that their parents or caregivers have said, and now we hear them sort of revisited, what are they saying yes to, and really giving them a way to dive into that so that when they are standing there on that Sunday or sitting there on that Sunday, they know what they are saying yes to, and they have affirmed that this is a step they want to take. So these are the 4 units that we have planned. So by this time next year, all 4 units will be available, and we are listening closely to you, the leaders of confirmation, to see if there were other units to be developed. We want to know what the most relevant topics would be. So we have some questions for you. We also know that you have been asking several questions. So I'm going to turn things over to David to see. He is our absolute excellent host of all webinars, and he will give us direction of what we do to spend about the next 10 minutes together.
Yeah, we've got questions going in both directions here right now, because this is a project that is under development. And as you heard Dr. Dawn just say, we're really curious too, as we develop these units, what you would be looking for. I do have a couple of questions, perhaps, Dawn and Heather, before we go into all of this. And let's see if I can pull a couple of them in front of you. Are quests best done with peers or with their families?
That is a good question. The quests are done while they're at confirmation with their peers and their confirmation class. However, I will say this, if they enjoy what they do during their quest, they can easily guide their family through it at home as well. So the quests are built and made to be done during the confirmation class time. But again, building that bridge between church and home would be great if they want to repeat it at home with their families.
So this is a bit of a complicated one. Could you gather all the materials for all the quests and let them choose which one they'd like to do? How could this be adapted for people who miss a lesson? Could these quests be done on one's own? And there's a couple of questions related to this in terms of self-directed learning.
We have structured the first page of Discover Time as a very brief summary of each quest, so that the leader can say to the students, okay, here are the quests for today. And they can describe all 3 of them in a sentence or 2, so that that student can choose, like, oh, do I want to do one that's more of like a movement and like we're going to be around the church in a scavenger hunt, but like, oh, this one's an art project. And I see the supplies over on the table, and one of the things we really emphasize is to have high quality art supplies when they are doing projects like that, instead of like running to the Sunday school closet and you know what that easily rippable construction paper is like, right? Or the low grade watercolors. We want these students to have great artist quality materials if they are making something. And so we give a way to have you summarize the 3 quests, and students can see, and if you've prepared all 3, they choose which one they want to do. That probably for many students will involve them asking their friends, well, which one do you want to do? Which one do you want to do? But they are designed primarily for them to do in small groups rather than individually. Although for quests that are like that art project, a lot of times they can just be in front of the art materials, and for the quest time, they are doing their own thing. It's so variable. I feel like it's so variable. The quests are really varied from session to session that we can't give one answer that applies to all of them, because there's so much variety.
But I can address the question about materials. And I will say this curriculum is quite heavy in the preparation for leaders. This is not a curriculum that you can easily grab off your shelf and be ready in 10 minutes, because there are a lot of materials and resources to gather for many of the quests. So to answer the question about materials that was just asked, you do gather all the materials, you put them together by quest, wherever the quests are taking place. And those are prepared and ready before students arrive, so that when it comes to the quest time and after you read the summaries of each quest, students are ready to go, things are ready to go as soon as students get to their quest areas.
Well, let's keep following up on that, Heather, if we can. How many adults do you need for this program? 1 per quest? Can multiple quests happen in the same room?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that really depends on your own rules and policies about student to adult ratio in your own place. There are quests that take students into other rooms and other spaces of the church building. And so if that is an option for you, it is best to have another adult supervising, making sure kids are safe, staying on topic. And with that leader guide, then if students are having questions or trouble leading themselves through the quest, you do have an adult there to help facilitate them and get them back on track. So it may take more than one adult depending on your context and the way that your space allows, but you can also do multiple quests in one room as well. I know in my own congregation it's not really an option to use different spaces in the church building. So we've taken that into consideration as well for students and churches who only have one confirmation space. And when you get into your leader guide and flip through the student quest book, you'll be able to figure out what works best in your own context.
All right, one more before we go into the questions that you would like to ask, Dawn and Heather. And that has to do with what you think is the age that this curriculum is optimal for.
We've designed it knowing that some programs start as early as 5th grade and some go up through 9th. And so we think a lot about middle schoolers like 6th, 7th, 8th, but I think it's not a stretch at all to have 5th graders start if that's when your program starts, and to have it go through, if you have 9th graders, we think that they would still find these engaging activities. I think the thing we've also realized is we know that you are all at different parts in your confirmation programs. Some of you may have already done a theology unit or a worship unit or that sort of thing. And so we're starting with worship. We would have loved to have all 4 ready for you at the same time so you could choose from the 4. But we recognize that some students who start this first unit might be in 5th or 6th grade, just starting confirmation. And we realize for other folks, this unit on Lutheran worship might be the last unit that your 8th or 9th graders do before they are confirmed. And so that's kind of one of the challenges of starting a new curriculum where the leaders like you already have sort of a very set idea in many cases of the topics you want to cover over the 2 or 3 years of your program.
I think related to that, Dawn, are the units standalone or do they build on one another? How can we best handle 1st and 2nd year students?
I think they echo each other, but you don't have to do unit 1 for unit 2 to be effective. And you don't have to do unit 2 for unit 3 to be effective. You can choose them based on what content you need at what time versus having it be a linear curriculum. It's more that you'll want to do the 10 sessions in order, but you'll be able to choose once the full curriculum is out with all the 4 units, you'll be able to choose the one that's the best fit for you.
All right, I'm going to go to the view where we're looking at some of the questions that you have for the assembled group here, because I think this is really important for our ongoing development, is it not? And so if you all could respond to a couple of these questions, it would be very much appreciated. This is a collaborative experience. It began with ethnography. It continues with the response of the users, and there is more development to come. And so, Dawn, would you or Heather like to pose these questions?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. And I'm going to ask what you really like, something you really like about teaching confirmation. I feel like middle schoolers, a lot of times when you say you teach confirmation, people have this immense sense of relief that, oh, good, someone's doing it, because they can sometimes be a little terrified by this age group. But as you probably all know, there's something about sitting down with 6th and 7th and 8th graders that they have a different lens for how they see things, and their highs are so high and their lows are so low. And they're also, speaking from a neurological perspective, they're also sort of in this pre-adolescence time where their brain development is just reorganizing like crazy, and their synapses are pruning and their brains are getting more efficient. But it's going to take more than 10 years to get at that full maturity of their prefrontal cortex. So I know that you know that there can be some awesome things about teaching confirmation, and we would just love to hear that from you in the comments. And I see lots and lots there as well. And really imagine having the enthusiasm of these learners. Imagine if all stages of lifespan had this gusto. would be something. It would really be something. So I love reading what people are talking about, their honesty, connecting with them, their individual, unique perspective, which, if you've known those kids for a while, like they are a different kind of learner and observer and communicator when they're in seventh grade compared to when they were in third grade. Like their brain is able to do some new things. So this is really great to see all these responses. And so thank you for all that you're noticing about these middle school learners. Should we go to the next question? This is a length one, just helping us see. And COVID may have meant that you changed the length, or maybe you're still consistently doing a 2-year program or a 3-year program. But by all means, you can still keep commenting on what you like about teaching confirmation, but we'd love to see your durations as well. So we're seeing 2 and 3 years here in the comments I'm looking at. It's always a surprise for me when I connect with Methodists who are like, we have a 6-week confirmation program. And I think, okay, this is one of those denominational differences that we see compared to our rather extensive time here. So thank you so much for providing all this information about the length of your programs. Heather, do you want to take the next couple questions?
Yeah, I do want to make sure we go to the very first question we had about as we continue to develop this program. I'll keep going, David, to the very first one. What supplemental topics, one more above, yeah, right here. What topics would you like to see? So, okay, maybe we have that on a different slide. Sorry about that. Where were we? How many students? Okay, yeah. How many students are in your confirmation program? I can't actually see the comments, so if Dawn or David could read some of them out.
We've got someone with 2 and one with 5 to 6. We've got someone with 9 and 4 and 8 to 10 and 12 and 30 and 8. 6 right now, 15 and 10, 19, 10 to 12, 12, 12, 5. 3 students currently, but sometimes around 6. Allison, we have all been there. that 50% range of variability there. We've got, lots of variability of people leading confirmation for 2 students and someone with 30. And so,
Dawn, may I jump in real quick?
Of course,
I was in Des Moines at the Women of the ELCA gathering last week, and we did have Lutheran Yes available to people to kind of kickstart their preparation. And someone asked me, "Can I do it with one? What if I have just one?" And I guess I wanted to pose that question on behalf of the person who posed it to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's possible. I think you'd have to kind of curate the quests and see which one might be the best fit from week to week. Or even like, I always think whenever you're making a decision as a leader, I ask like, well, could the student help me make the decision? So maybe you go through it together and say like, let's plan out these quests that you're going to be doing and look at the brief descriptions, and then they can pick which one they think looks most interesting.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions. We just want kind of a quick yes or no to see sort of the majority of answers. Are we getting yeses or nos? So for the next question, if just type yes or no. Do you have a retreat as part of your confirmation program?
Okay. Right off the bat, we've got a yes, we got a no, we got a yes, we got a no, we got a yes, we got a no.
And a no.
Okay.
There's so much variability to this, which I think is to me, it really speaks to how you are designing this experience for your students based on what your context is, what your needs are, maybe what the traditions were, but probably more based on like, what do these students seem to need and resonate with right now. So a whole looks like a retreat with the whole synod. Wow.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And confirmation camp was mentioned. So this is really helpful. If you've got an answer about the retreat, put it in there now, because we'll ask you another question soon.
Yes. We have another yes or no question.
All right.
Okay, and I believe our final question is another yes or no question. Do your students create and or present a faith statement before they are confirmed?
Lots of, again, a yes, a no, a yes, a yes, a yes. Oh, lots of yeses, and then there are a couple no's. So again, quite a bit of variability in how you are responding, depending on what's working for your program, maybe what you're equipped to do. So it's wonderful to see that faith statements have kind of made their way into a lot of people's programs, but not everybody. And one of the reasons we're asking this is we don't want to assume that everybody does this and have like a whole lessons and things like that built around the assumption when a lot of people aren't. Mm-hmm. So this is really helpful to see this.
And we do have one final yes or no question. So go ahead again, type yes or no. Does your confirmation program include service projects?
Okay, lots of yeses here. Good, good, good. And we also know those are very contextual. We do have some ideas in our Lutheran theology unit on as they learn about what the how we as Lutherans are present around the world. There may be some ideas for service projects about that. And so it's great to see there's some yes and there's some no's, but there's also like, no, not quite, or no, we'd like to do this. So we really are approaching Lutheran Yes with a lot of yes, or yes and, I guess, from the improv world to say, we've had this first unit released. We're working on units 2, 3, and 4 right now, and we want to be tuned into what your deepest needs are and what your context is, so that we can equip you to lead these students in confirmation and help them know how much they are loved and how much faith in daily life can be part of how they face those challenges of middle school and then high school and young adulthood. And so we are here, we think about confirmation leaders, I would say, every day, and what you are needing and what you are up to, and also those little moments of joy and delight that you undoubtedly experience some of the time that you are teaching confirmation.
Well, and before we go on, I would like to provide some affirmation for your work, Dawn and Heather. Robert said, "This is just what I'm looking for," and I think all of us are in a situation when it comes to confirmation where we really want to be with the kids in significant ways, and really thank Robert for giving us an opportunity to express that this indeed feels like a confirmation that relates to how Christians actually live their lives, which I think is pretty awesome. There's a couple other thoughts about the cards themselves, if I could find them. Oh, this is a good one. I'd love some very practical things that connect Lutheran ethics to living our baptismal vows out. And correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, but that's really one of the driving principles of this confirmation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will get a lot of that in the baptismal affirmations unit as well.
I have no idea what Nicole is talking about. Do you? I'm always eager to learn things, but
I don't. But I bet the people we have now 2 card designers who have worked with us on decks. I bet they would know. These folks are like, they have played so many games over the years. They are so fluent in the different game rules and card types. And so, Nicole, I bet our card developers would know Dixit cards.
Well, and similarly, Jill says, love these cards, and they are beautiful. They're fun, they're beautiful, they're interactive. At the Welka gathering, people were just wanting the decks of cards, which I thought was interesting, because I'm going, well, okay, I mean, it's part of a curriculum, but you can buy them if you want. But they were that intriguing, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, can I just hop in for a minute? Because I use them. I'm on our church council, and I used them as a council devotion one night, and our council at our church really enjoyed that as well. My kids are in confirmation. My son's about to start, and I just had the connection deck on our kitchen table laying out, and both of my kids just gathered by these cards and just spontaneously started looking at the cards and making connections with their own life and their own faith. And we had these amazing, just spontaneous conversations that were all because of these cards. So we see a lot of different uses for these cards, and definitely it's a integral piece of this program as kids make connections with themselves and each other, and connections with their own faith and God and the wider church community. So I'm glad folks are enjoying them so far.
That's fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are well over our 45 minutes, but it's really exciting to be rolling out a brand new curriculum here at Spark House, and I'm excited for the unique aspects of this curriculum that are highly connected to the ethnography we've done, what we're hearing from people, and we want to continue to hear from you all. So thank you for being involved in a little bit of ethnography in this webinar. I'm going to continue on just a little bit here. Well, what questions do you have for us? You've been asking us a bunch of questions already, but I suppose if you have any more, please pop them in before we end the webinar. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being here and for saying yes to this new approach to confirmation. I do want to give you two additional sources of information if you want to scan these QR codes. I know why, and I need to do that. So yeah, sorry about that. The Lutheran Yes QR code is there, and the Lutheran Yes blog post that is talking about more and more about Lutheran Yes, you can go to as well. You can scan those. I'm going to go, while you're taking the opportunity to scan some of these things, I am going to go to a couple of the other questions that have popped up in the meantime. How about this one? Do we know yet if we're going to be having any church history sessions?
The unit on Lutheran theology taps into some Reformation history and some Lutheran history, but we don't have a unit specific to church history. However, in some of the background knowledge in the Getting Ready section of the Leader Guide, we tap into some historical context and some history as you begin preparing for the session. And you'll see some of that in the Lutheran theology unit.
How about this one? How would you handle makeup sessions using Lutheran Yes?
Don, do you want to talk about that one?
Yes, I was just responding to that. I think you could decide if you wanted that student to engage with the Bible texts. That would have been part of the focus time. And then I would look to the fellow students to say, Joshua couldn't be with us last time we met. Hey, we did 2 quests then. Why don't, if you did this quest, why don't you share a little bit? If you did that quest, why don't you share a little bit? And there's always the option, like if you wanted to get the materials together for Joshua, the person who missed, to do that quest. But I think, and I said this in the comment as well, the quests are just so variable from week to week that we can't sort of predictably say like, oh, there's always going to be one that's well suited for a makeup session, or there's always going to be one that's well suited for a hybrid session. Someone else was asking about that because we really wanted our writers to kind of unleash their imagination in like, what's a creative multimodal way for students to engage with this session topic, and do that 3 different times and design the quest that way.
All right. Well, again, to kind of wrap up this conversation a little bit, I do want to say that, Jack, thank you. Looks really good. Love the premise and how it will be lived out. Really appreciate Jana saying thank you very much. I'm excited about this. Merle, thank you for these resources. I'm looking forward to using the cards, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So we're keep in touch as we roll out Lutheran Yes, and as you use Lutheran Yes, we're really encouraged by your responses and certainly by everybody that has poured their heart and soul into this new new curriculum from Sparkhouse. So with that, I guess, unless there's any more questions, we need to, oh, this is a good one. I think we want to talk about this real quick. For people who want to prepare ahead of time, how quickly can we give them resources to get them going, especially with the up and coming units?
That's Michelle. Thank you for pointing out the table of contents would be very helpful. Heather, let's put that on our to-do list. We can connect with our web designer and have the table of contents for Unit 3 be posted very soon. Unit 2. You probably all know what Unit 3 is about because it's the 10 Commandments. So we can get Unit 2's table of contents of sessions up online definitely before your program year starts in September.
Great question.
All right. Well, as much as I would like to continue to talk about Lutheran Yes,
same.
And we could talk about Lutheran Yes, I think we will be closing off this webinar, at least this initial overview webinar into Lutheran Yes. So thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Heather.